Individuals today participate in a global marketplace whether they realize it or not. For example, many of the goods you consume are manufactured or harvested in foreign lands. Proponents of the global marketplace and free trade argue that it benefits us all because it allows people in developing and least developed countries to enjoy the same economic benefits as citizens of more developed countries. Others warn of problems such as global warming and stress the need for international agreements that would force industries and governments to develop and adhere to environmental standards to protect the future of the planet. But critics feel that limits on trade are necessary to protect domestic industries to ensure the safety of American consumers. World trade refers to the flow of goods and services among different countries, the value of all exports and imports of the world's nations. Like many American companies that feel they're running out of growth opportunities in the American marketplace, the retail giant Walmart aggressively plans its international presence, but you can be sure that when its planners plot future growth, they're keenly aware of competitors in their external environment who have other ideas. The growth in world trade in recent years has been accompanied by a glut of unsafe products, many of which have come from China. Not all nations participate equally in world trade. Knowing who does business with whom is essential to developing an overseas marketing strategy. As this figure shows, North America trades merchandise most heavily with Asia, Europe, and Latin America. In deciding whether or not to go global, a firm must consider both market conditions in the domestic and global markets, as well as their competitive advantage. Typically, many firms decide to go global when domestic demand declines, particularly if demand in foreign markets seems to be growing. Not all competitive advantages travel well when marketing products abroad, while others offer an even stronger advantage abroad than they do domestically. For example, developing countries typically do not have the engineering expertise, highly trained workers, or high-tech facilities associated with many tech firms based in the United States. Key U.S. exports include food, industrial supplies, tourism, and entertainment. Of course, it isn't only Western countries that are going global. For years, China was a huge export market for Western firms as consumers there began to prosper and crave foreign goods. Now the Chinese are turning the tables as they carve out a larger role in the global marketplace. One must understand international, regional, and country regulations that enact a policy of protectionism. They may set import quotas, or use embargoes, trade prohibition with a country, or tariffs, taxes on imported goods to restrict foreign competition. Economic communities are composed of groups of countries that band together promote trade among themselves while facilitating trade with countries outside of the community. From a marketing standpoint, economic communities are helpful in setting policies related to product content, advertising, and packaging labels. The most well-known economic communities include NAFTA and the European Union. The purpose of the World Trade Organization is to supervise and liberalize international trade, and WTO members account for over 97% of world trade. Its most important functions include overseeing the implementation, administration, and operation of the covered agreements, as well as providing a forum for negotiation and for settling disputes. Unfortunately, product piracy abroad continues to be a problem, costing American firms millions of dollars annually. It's essential to understand elements of the firm's external environment to succeed in both domestic and global markets. This figure provides an overview of the external evidence that need to be scanned and monitored by marketers. Each of these elements will be discussed in more detail on the following slides. We must ask the following questions. How much domestic demand exists for the firm's products? What is the potential for market demand abroad? Is a firm able to secure a competitive advantage in foreign markets? And what competitive advantages does each country have relative to competing countries? When marketers scout the world for opportunities, it helps if they consider a country's level of economic development to understand the needs of people who live there and the infrastructure conditions with which they must contend. In doing so, they also look at what steps a country is taking to reduce poverty, inequality, and unemployment. Analysts also take into account a country's standard of living, which is an indicator of the average quality and quantity of goods and services a country consumes. Based on these factors, the level of economic development of a particular nation can be determined. The political and legal environment refers to the local, state, national, and global laws and regulations that affect businesses. Legal and regulatory controls can be prime motivators for many business decisions because they often limit the actions that marketers or businesses are allowed to undertake. Global marketers must understand more complex political issues that can affect how they are allowed to do business around the world. Some American laws, such as the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, also restrict business actions of American firms in the global market. For example, a prime provision of the Act is the prohibition of bribery to sell overseas, regardless whether or not bribery is a common and accepted practice in a given country. The socio-cultural environment refers to the characteristics of the society, the people who live in that society, and the culture that reflects the values and beliefs of the society. Whether at home or in global markets, marketers need to understand and adapt to the customs, characteristics, and practice of its citizens, as these factors affect people's responses to products and promotional messages in any market. In order to have a market, consumers must have money. Two popular measures of national income are gross national income, the total value of goods and services produced by a country's economy in a year by its residents, and not including income earned by foreigners who own resources in that nation. Gross domestic product includes gross national income for a nation plus income earned by foreigners who own resources in that nation. Marketers should examine both gross domestic product and gross national income and other measures in order to get a complete picture of income. These two measures do not indicate how much money is in the hands of individuals in a country, and this is obtained by dividing the gross national income by the nation's population size. There might be considerable potential and less competition in areas where per capita income is low. Marketers need to be particularly attentive to the level of development in a nation as well as to national and individual income. Less developed countries can be attractive markets for many products. What do third world consumers really need? They may need low-cost products that satisfy basic human needs. There may be ethical dilemmas in dealing with these consumers. There may be literacy or marketing problems. Literacy, the ability of people to read. Low literacy rates affect advertising, product labeling, market research, and other aspects of the marketing mix. Much segmenting may be required. Marketers need to segment carefully using good information from the World Bank, the Central Intelligence Agency, and the U.S. Census Bureau. Political and legal environment might include economic sanctions, nationalization, expropriation, and regulatory issues, product requirements, local content rules, and human rights issues. Every society has a set of cultural values or deeply held beliefs about right and wrong ways to live that it imparts to its members. Differences in values between one country and another often explain why marketing efforts that are a big hit in the United States can flop abroad. For example, one important dimension on which cultures differ is their emphasis on collectivism versus individualism. In collectivist cultures, such as those we find in Venezuela, Pakistan, Taiwan, Greece, and others, people tend to subordinate their personal goals to those of a stable community. In contrast, consumers in individualist countries such as the United States, Australia, Great Britain, Canada, and the Netherlands tend to attach more importance to personal goals than they do to those of the larger community. This difference can be a big deal to marketers who appeal to one extreme or the other. Try selling a garment that is sure to make you stand out to consumers who would much prefer to fit in. Social norms are specific rules dictating what is right or wrong, acceptable or unacceptable. Norms flow from values and dictate how people within a country dress, speak, and otherwise behave. For example, beef is taboo in India, while few Americans could even stomach the thought of eating dog meat or horse meat, food common elsewhere. Customs are related to norms. In the context of meals, a custom would dictate when dinner should begin, 6 or 7 p.m. in the US, as opposed to 9 p.m. or later in Europe. Customs can also relate to things such as eye contact, personal space, and whether giving one kiss or two on the cheek is a proper greeting. Marketers who don't know the local customs when working abroad are at a severe disadvantage in transacting businesses. Language barriers can be very problematic, particularly when slogans or brand names are literally translated from one language to another. It is vital for marketers to work with local people who understand the subtleties of language to avoid confusion. Finally, it's important to understand that ethnocentrism is common. It is a tendency to prefer products or peoples of one's own culture. In many countries, the willingness to try goods made in other countries comes slowly. Customs, norms handed down from the past control basic behaviors. Choosing a market entry strategy is a critical decision for companies that want to go global. A decision to operate the new venture versus sharing the responsibility with organizations in the local market involve a trade-off between control and risk. If a standardization strategy is chosen, the same strategy used in the home market is applied in the same way abroad. Proponents of standardization argue that the world has become so small that basic needs and wants are the same everywhere, so why not enjoy economies of scale by spreading the costs of product development and promotional materials across multiple markets? In contrast, those in favor of localization feel that the world is not that small. You need to tailor products and promotional messages to local environments. These marketers feel that each culture is unique with a distinct set of behavioral and personality characteristics. Once the basic strategy of standardization or localization is chosen, it's time to tweak the marketing mix. In addition to the big picture, decisions about how a company will operate in other countries, managers must decide how to market their product in each country. They may need to modify the famous 4 Ps, product, place, price, promotion, to suit local conditions. This decision boils down to a choice between following a policy, as we mentioned, of standardization or localization for the marketing mix strategy. A firm has 3 choices when it decides on a product strategy: sell the same product in the new market, 2, modify it for that market, 3, develop a brand new product to sell there. A straight extension strategy is used when a firm offers the same product in both domestic and foreign markets. A product adaptation strategy occurs when a firm offers a similar but modified product in foreign markets. The product invention variation requires a firm to develop a new product for foreign markets. By contrast, backward invention occurs when a firm develops a less advanced product to serve the needs of people living in countries without electricity or other elements of a developed infrastructure. Will the same promotional message work in the different markets? Marketers must also decide whether it's necessary to modify how they speak to consumers in a foreign market. Some firms endorse the idea that the same message will appeal to everyone around the world, while others feel the need to customize it. As you might expect, many marketers at least choose to translate the message into the dominant language, but the prevalence of English worldwide does allow marketers the flexibility of running an English language ad globally. Standardized strategies are more likely to work when cultural factors are similar and when target customers are in cosmopolitan urban areas. Clever ad executions can avoid the language barrier entirely. You may be surprised to learn that it's often more expensive to manufacture a product in a foreign market than at home. This is because there are higher costs stemming from transportation, tariffs, differences in currency exchange rates, and the need to source local materials. To ease the financial burden of tariffs on companies that import goods, some countries have established free trade zones. These are designated areas where foreign companies can warehouse goods without paying taxes or customs duties until they move the goods into the marketplace. Costs are important, of course, because the influence of the ultimate price set for the product. One danger of pricing too high is that competitors will find ways to offer their product at a lower price, even if they do so illegally. Grey market goods are items that are imported without the consent of the trademark holder. While grey market goods are not counterfeit, they may be different from authorized products in warranty coverage and compliance with local regulatory requirements. For example, some of you may have gotten your hands on the international version of the textbook for this course, which is only supposed to be sold outside of the United States. This would be an example of a grey market good. Another unethical and often illegal practice is dumping, in which a company prices its products lower than it offers at home. This removes excess supply from home markets and keeps prices up there. Getting your product to consumers in a remote location can be quite a challenge. It's essential for a firm to establish a reliable distribution system if it's going to succeed in a foreign market. For example, in least developed countries, marketers may run into problems when they want to package, refrigerate, or store goods for long periods.